Three rules are to explain here. The first one is consideration must be sufficient. Now, the fourth one here, existing legal obligation. Existing legal obligations. The fourth one is existing legal obligation. The fifth one is existing contractual obligation. Existing contractual obligation. Apa?
Contractual what lah?
Contractual obligation. The sixth one, consideration must be practical and possible to be performed. Okay, now going back to existing legal obligation here. What do you mean by existing legal obligation? Okay, what do you mean by this here? Existing obligation, existing legal obligation, yeah. Existing legal obligation is not a valid consideration.
So just now the thing, can you repeat again?
Which one?
The consideration must be practical to perform.
Okay. Consideration must be practical and possible. Consideration must be practical and possible to be performed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Is here existing contractual, existing legal obligation. That's what I just mentioned. Right? Existing legal obligation. Existing legal obligation is not a valid consideration. It's not a valid consideration. Okay, what do you mean by this here? Existing legal obligation is not a valid consideration. What do you mean by this here? Let's say I put three parties here, A, B, and C. I'm putting three parties, A, B, and C. Okay, A is receiving a letter. A is receiving a letter from C. A is receiving a letter from C. C, let's say court, Mahkamah, C-O-U-R-T. A is receiving a letter from C, from the court, asking A to come to court to give evidence in B's case. Okay, so that means yeah, A is receiving a letter from C, that is Mahkamah court, asking A to come to the court to give evidence in B's case or B's trial. Okay, now for B to win the case, very important, the evidence of A. Okay, so A has received a letter from C. Yeah. Okay, now A is doesn't want to come to court to give evidence, but B is telling to A, hey, I give you 3,000 ringgit. I give you 3,000 ringgit as a consideration. I give you 3,000 ringgit as a consideration. Please come to the court and give evidence. Since B is giving 3,000 ringgit as a consideration, now A is coming to the court to give evidence. After giving evidence, now B is refusing to pay the 3,000 ringgit to A. Now, can A sue B to claim that 3,000 ringgit? Can or cannot? What is it? You got the scenario I explained? Did you all get the picture? Hello?
Yes.
You got it, yeah? Okay. Can now A sue B for not giving the 3,000 because A has already provided the consideration by going to court and give evidence, right? Am I right? Can now A
Yeah.
sue B to recover the 3,000 ringgit? What do you think?
I think cannot.
Okay. Why? Why Shirley cannot? Why Shirley?
Because it's the main thing is A with the C, but B is just the extra person that asks for giving the evidence.
Ah, because under the law, whether A likes it or not, it is A's obligation to come to the court to give evidence. Whether he likes it or not, it's under the law. He must come to the court to give evidence. Am I right? Because he has received a subpoena from the court, an order from the court, asking A to come to court to give evidence. Am I right? Under the law, whether A likes it or not, he has to come to court to give evidence. But he cannot say, A, B said he will give me 3,000, that's why I came to give the evidence. That is not a consideration, because under the law, A is compelled to come to the court to give evidence. Are you clear? So here, existing legal obligation under the law is the obligation of A to come to the court to give evidence. He cannot say, hey, he promised me he'll give me 3,000, that's why I come and give the evidence. Because under the law, he must come and give the evidence. If he refuses to come, that is contempt of court. It's a criminal offense. Are you all clear?
Yes.
Okay, good. The other one I said existing contractual obligation. Am I right? Existing contractual obligation, is it a valid consideration? Am I right? Existing contractual obligation, is it a valid consideration? Am I right? Okay, I'll give you here two scenario. Yeah. This is a shipping law case. This is a shipping law case. Yeah. Two cases. Uh, hold on. Yeah. 1 second. Yeah. Somebody's knocking the door. 1 second. Yeah. Hello. 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 Sorry, yes, some urgent matter here. Sorry, yeah. Okay, now, so two situation, yeah. I'm going to give you two cases. The first case is Steel and Myrick, STILK, STILK versus Myrick, MYRICK, MYRICK. And for the second situation, another case, Hatley and Ponsonby, Hatley, HEARTLEY, HEARTLY versus Ponsonby, POSONBY. Okay, both these cases is a shipping law case, yeah. Both these cases is a shipping law case. Okay, the first situation, yeah, still and married. Okay, here what happened, yeah. This is an agreement between a captain of a ship, SHIP, yeah, not SHEEP, yeah. You don't know the difference between SHIP and SHEEP?
Yes.
Yes, Shelly, what's the difference?
Ship is the boat. Ship is the animal.
Yeah, yeah, right. Okay. Right, I'm just joking. Yeah. Okay. So here, the captain of a vessel, entered into an agreement with 20 with 20 crew members, okay, with 20 crew members, with 20 sailors to work in the ship throughout the voyage from the port of departure till till the ship arrives at the port of arrival. So that means these 20 sailors supposed to work in that ship throughout the voyage from the port of departure till the ship arrive at the port of arrival. So that means these 20 sailors supposed to work, and then they'll be paid a certain amount of money. Okay, they'll be paid certain amount of money. On the day of the departure, on the day of departure, only 18 sailors turn up. Only 18 sailors turn up. 2 sailors didn't turn up. So the captain of the vessel told them, never mind, I'll pay you some extra for doing the job of the 2 sailors. 18 of you can do some extra job for the job of the 2 sailors. I'll pay you something extra than what I was promised you. Once the ship has arrived at the port of arrival, the captain only paid them whatever was in the agreement, that is the original money. He didn't pay them the extra which he promised to pay them. So the sailors took him to the court. When this case went to the court, the judge said 18 of them doing the job of a 2%. That is part and parcel of a working life. Even in an office, 1 or 2 staff will be on a MC, medical certificate, medical leave. The rest have to do the job. They are not being paid extra because this is part and parcel of the job. So 18 of them doing the job of a 2%, which is very, very minimal. Minimal, am I right? So the 18 sailors lost the case. They were only paid whatever money which is due to them. That was the original amount promised, So the sailors lost the case, but they only paid what was initially promised by the captain. The second situation, where again the captain arranged for 20 sailors to turn up, but on the day of departure, only 10 sailors turn up. 10 sailors didn't turn up. Only 10 turn up. So that means here, 10 of them have to do the job of a 20%. So that means each person has to do a job of 2% job. Am I right? So the captain said, I'll pay you all the extra money. But upon arrival at the port of arrival, he refused to pay. They took him to the court. Here the judge said, here there's a total change of the job description. Here physically, one person is doing the job of a 2%. So totally has changed the actual original contract. So therefore, the captain had to pay whatever been promised to them, the extra money. So they want. So here you see, existing contract obligation depend on the degree of the difference. There 18 of them doing the job of a 2%. That is part and parcel. But here 10% is doing the job of 20%. That means physically one person is doing the job of 2%, which is totally different from the original contract. Am I right? So here the second situation in Hadley and Ponsonby, the 10 sailors won the case because there's a total change in the scope of their job description. Am I right? Fair, isn't it? Hello? Betul kan? Okay, the last one I did mention is consideration must be practical and possible to be performed. Now, class rep, hello? Class rep,
Yes, yes.
are you on the line? Okay, I'm
Yes.
telling to the class rep, you run to Singapore in 5 hours. From Kuala Lumpur, you run to Singapore in 5 hours. I'll pay you 10 million ringgit. Is it practical and possible for you to run to Singapore in 5 hours?
No.
Can you run to Singapore in 5 hours?
You mean what? By leg running
Yes, your 2 legs.
I don't think so.
Physically, you are running to Singapore.
I
Even
don't think
even
so.
even 5 days, is it possible? 5 days, boleh ke 5 days? 5 days pun tak cukup, ah.
Yeah.
So here, what the law say, if you're entering to an agreement with somebody, the consideration which one party is providing, it must be practical and possible to be performed. You cannot set something which is impossible to take place. You cannot set something which is impossible to take place. That is what the law says. Can I tell you, go to the sun and come back, I'll pay you 10 million. Go to the sun and come back. Is it practical and possible for you to go to the sun and come back?
No.
It's practical and possible for you to go to the moon and come back. Moon, am I right?
So
MOON.
so teacher, what you
Yes.
mean is the consideration is not valid, it's invalid.
Because here, when you're entering an agreement with somebody, the consideration must be practical and possible to be performed. You cannot set something which is impossible to take place. Betul kan? Are you following? So here, what the consideration must be practical and possible to be performed by the parties. You cannot set something which is impossible to take place. Okay? Clear? Hello?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now I quickly want to go into one topic called exemption clause. Yeah, I think I still have an hour to go. Yeah, exemption clause. Okay, exemption clause. Pernah dengar tak the word exemption clause? Have you heard of the word exemption clause? EXEMPTION clause. Exemption clause. Okay, exemption clause means if you have seen a signboard, parking your car at your own risk. Have you seen a signboard? Parking your car at your own risk.
Yes.
Okay, what is the purpose of that notice? What is the purpose of that notice? Why do they put up such a notice? Yes? Why do they put up such a notice? Why? What's the purpose?
If someone break your car, that is not their responsibility.
The owner of the premises is not held liable for whatever loss, damage to your car. Am I right? For their protection, they put such a clause. Am I right? This is what we call an exemption clause. Now, going back to exemption clause, yeah, all agreements, whether is it a standard agreement or specific agreement, all agreements will have exemption clause as one of the terms of the agreement. All agreements will have exemption clause as one of the terms of an agreement. Normally, yeah, okay. Now, even if you take the Hire Purchase Act, the Hire Purchase Act of Malaysia 1967, yeah, when you buy a car under a loan, let's say from Maybank, who decides the terms of the agreement? You decide or the bank will decide? Who will decide the terms of the agreement?
The bank.
Of course, the bank will decide. Am I right? Okay. All hire purchase agreement, the bank, especially your car loan, yeah, or even housing loan, whatever agreements, yeah, the bank will put a clause. Okay, especially car, yeah. They say if you did not service the car loan continuously for 2 months and 21 days under the fourth schedule of the Hire Purchase Act 1967, we have the right to come and repossess the car. You have the right to come and repossess the car, to take back away the car if you did not service the car loan continuously for 2 months and 21 days. Okay, what is the purpose? Why do they put up such a clause? Why? Why do you think? To protect their own interest, right? If you did not service the loan, then they can come and take away the car, right? If let's say they didn't put such a clause in that agreement, even if you never pay the service the loan for 10 months, still they cannot come and take away the car. Why they doing that? To protect their own interest, am I right? Betul kan? Yes or no? Hello?
Yes.
Why the silence? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Good. Okay. So now exemption clause. Yeah. All agreements agreements will have exemption clause as one of the terms of an agreement. Hello, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, this is an examinable area. Yeah, I want you all to. I'll give you all some cases. You all going to do some work also on some of the cases. Yeah. Okay. Now, so here, now every agreements will have exemption clause as one of the terms of an agreement. Okay. Now, this exemption clause can be subdivided. This exemption clause can be subdivided into exclusion clause and limitation clause. Can be subdivided into exclusion clause and limitation clause. Exclusion clause and limitation clause. Exclusion clause, total exclusion of liability. Total exclusion of liability. That means you are fully exempted from liability. Whereas limitation clause, partial exclusion of liability. Partial exclusion of liability. You are not fully exempted from liability. You are not fully exempted from liability. Are you following?
Can you
Now
repeat
you see,
again? Fully what?
now, okay, now going back to the original word, yeah, exemption clause, yeah, exemption clause, yeah, exemption clause. Why do parties insert an exemption clause into an agreement? The purpose is to protect its interest. In case if one party did not service the loan or whatever, then they have the right to take action against the person who did not service the loan, right? To protect their own interest, they put in some exemption clause. Okay, this exemption clause can be subdivided into exclusion clause and limitation clause. Exclusion clause, total exclusion of liability. Total exclusion, that means you are fully protected from liability. Whereas exempted from liability, whereas limitation clause partial. Okay, what do you mean by partial here, limitation clause here? Let's say I'm entering to an agreement, and in that agreement I say, if a breach were to take place, I will only pay up to 100,000 ringgit as compensation. The actual breach has taken place. One party has suffered a loss of 150,000 ringgit. Since I've limited my liability to 100,000, I will only pay 100,000 ringgit because I've already limited my liability up to 100,000 ringgit. So I will only pay 100,000. So normally this exemption clause here, either exclusion clause or limitation clause here, normally the stronger party in an agreement has the right to, because they are the one who's determining the terms of the agreement, right? So you will put in all the clauses to protect their interest, Normally the weaker party has to accept it because they want a loan, right? So normally they will accept it because end of the day, the person who decides the terms of the agreement is the bank, right? They will put in all clauses to protect their own interest, to safeguard their own interest, am I right? Okay. Now, so this exemption clause must become a term of an agreement. This exemption clause must become a term of an agreement. Only then the party can rely on it. So all exemption clause must become a term of the agreement, must become the body of an agreement. Only then the party can rely on it. If an exemption clause is not one of the terms of an agreement, then the party cannot rely on it. So all exemption clause must become a term of an agreement. Only then the party can rely on it. And also here, the wording used in the exemption clause, it must be very clear. In law, we call this here contra proferendum rule. Very important, yeah. Contra, C-O-N-T-R-A. Contra proferendum, P-R-O-F-E-R-E-T-E-M rule. Contra preferendum rule says all exemption clause must be subject to only one interpretation. All exemption clause must be subject to only one interpretation, comma. If an exemption clause is subject to more than one interpretation, If an exemption clause is subject to more than one interpretation, then the judge would interpret that exemption clause against the party which has inserted the clause. I'll repeat again. Yeah? The contra preferendum rule says all exemption clause must be subject to only one interpretation, comma. If an exemption clause is subject to more than one interpretation, then the judge would interpret that against the party which has inserted the clause. Against the party which has inserted that particular clause. You can refer this to my notes here. Okay. Now, an exemption clause, very important now, yeah. The exemption clause can be incorporated. An exemption clause can be incorporated or inserted into an agreement in three ways. There are three ways in which an exemption clause can be inserted or incorporated into an agreement. There are three ways. The first one is signed document. The first one is signed document or signature. The first one is signed document or signature. The second one is display of notice. Display of notice. Display of notice. That's the second one. The third one is by previous. The third one is by previous course of dealings. The third one is by previous course of dealings. Okay, these three is very, very important. Yeah, very, very important. Yeah, hello, very, very important. Examinable area now. Okay, before me explaining these three, yeah, let me very briefly explain to you all. Yeah, the Contract Act of Malaysia, the Contract Act of Malaysia 1950 did not mention about exemption clause. The Contract Act of Malaysia 1950 did not mention about exemption clause. Nothing about exemption clause is stated in the Contract Act 1950. So therefore, Section 3 and Section 5, Section 3 and Section 5 of the Civil Law Act 1956, Section 3 and Section 5 of the Civil Law Act 1956 of Malaysia says, if there is no Malaysian law, then the English law will come and do a remedy, will provide the law. The English law will come and provide the law. Okay, even though now we have the Consumer Protection Act 1999. Okay, I'll come back to that shortly. Yeah. Okay. So the English law is helpful to solve the ambiguity of the exemption clause. Okay, so I did mention there are three ways in which an exemption clause can be incorporated into an agreement, right? The first one is by signed document or signature. Am I right? Okay, what do you mean by signed document or signature? Okay, two parties A and B are entering to an agreement. Two parties are entering to an agreement A and B. Yeah. Normally A and B will be negotiating. Am I right? Once the negotiation is over, both parties will put the important terms into writing. Once they put it in writing, that can be 10 pages, can be 50 pages, can be even 100 pages, depending on the agreement itself. Some agreements are very long, some are short, all the things, right? Okay, they put it everything in writing. Once the parties have put everything in writing, including the exemption clause, they put as the terms of agreement. Then later part, both parties will sign that agreement. Both parties will sign that agreement. Okay. The moment both parties sign that agreement, meaning they are validating or approving all the terms in the agreement. That means they are validating or approving all the terms in the agreement. Both parties must fulfill whatever obligation or terms which they've agreed to undertake, including the exemption clause, because the exemption clause has already become a term of the agreement, right? Both parties must fulfill all the terms, including the exemption clause in the agreement. If one party fail to fulfill the terms, that is even the exemption clause, that will lead to a breach. That will lead to a breach of contract. So here, okay, now I'll give you one case here. Quite difficult to get cases on this here. I'll give you one case here. The name of the case is L. Estrange versus Gregor. L, capital L, apostrophe, Estrange, Estrange. L. Estrange versus Gregor, Graccorp. You got it? L. Estrange versus Gregor. Yeah. What happened in this case? Yeah. L. Estrange, she is a owner of a cafeteria. Hello. I hope you all take down this here because on the day of the exam you all need this. L. Estrange versus Gregor. L. Estrange, she is the owner of a cafeteria. Gregor is the supplier of a vending machine. You know what's a vending machine, right? Vending machine, yeah. Supplier of a vending machine. This L. Estrange, she wanted to buy a cigarette vending machine for her cafeteria. A cigarette vending machine for her cafeteria. She wanted to buy a cigarette vending machine for her cafeteria. She has a cafe, yes. So she wanted to buy a cigarette vending machine where you put in money, you will get a packet of cigarettes. Right? So she entered the agreement. Okay, when she entered the agreement with Gregor is the supplier of the vending machine. So Gregor inserted certain exemption clause into that agreement. He said that if there were to be any repair, or any faulty to the vending machine, he will come and repair. He will come and repair at a nominal fee, at a minimum fee. But change of parts need to be paid in full. That is the clause which has inserted. So he said, if any repair, will come and repair at a nominal fee, at a minimum fee. But change of parts, you need to pay in full. So he inserted that clause. Later part, L. Estrange plus Gregor both signed that particular agreement. That means L. Estrange has agreed to whatever terms which has been put in by Gregor. Am I right? A few months later, there's some problem with the vending machine. As per the agreement, the supplier came and repaired at a nominal fee as agreed. And there were certain parts need to be changed. She need to pay in full amount. She refused to pay. L. Estrange refused to pay. She said she was not aware of such a clause in the agreement. She said she was not aware of such a clause. Instead of Gregor suing her, she sued Gregor for misrepresentation. That's why the case started out L. Estrange versus Gregor. Instead of Gregor suing her, she sued Gregor for misrepresentation. Misrepresentation comes under Section 18 of Contract Act 1950. She said she was not aware, so she sued. And when this case went to the court, yeah, the judge only asked one question. The judge only raised one question in the court. The judge asked her, "Is it your signature?" She said, "Yes." Then the judge said, "The moment you have signed an agreement, that means you have agreed to all the terms in the agreement, including the exemption clause. You need to fulfill it. If you fail to fulfill it, it is a breach." So she argued that she was not aware. Then the judge said, "It's your duty to verify all the terms before you sign the agreement. The moment you have signed the agreement, that means you have agreed to all the terms. You need to fulfill now." So she lost the case. So what I'm trying to say is, this is one of the leading cases which says that once you have signed that agreement, then you need to honor it, including whatever exemption clause which has been inserted there. Are you all clear? Okay.
Yes.
One additional case I want you all to go and read up here. Please go and read up here. The name of the case is Sangaralingam. Sangaralingam versus Wong Kuk Wah. Sangaralingam versus Wong Kuk Wah. Sangaralingam, Sangaralingam versus Wong, Wong, Kook, 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 Wah, Wah. We'll read up this case, yeah. Dapat? Hello?
Yes.
Got it, yeah? Okay. The second way in which an exemption clause can be incorporated into an agreement is by display of notice. Display of notice. This Sangarlingam case, yeah, this Sangarlingam versus Wang Kukwa, you can also use it for display of notice. So this case, you know, you can apply this case for both situation. Yeah. Okay. Display of notice. You see now, yeah, it's only display of notice, right? If you enter into the premises, you'll be gun. You can see a man standing with a gun. The picture, you know, or you're parking your car at your own risk. Am I right? Now, it's only in a notice form, but how this notice can be incorporated into an agreement? How? It's only the notice form, right? Display of notice, right? But how can this notice be incorporated into an agreement? Has anyone has any clue? No? It's only in a notice form, right? It's not in an agreement. It's only display of notice. Am I right? But how can this notice be incorporated into an agreement? Anyone has any clue?
No.
Okay. Okay. I give you one leading case here. This is a landmark case, you know. This is a landmark case here. The name of the case is Olley, Olley. Olley versus Marlborough Court House. Olley versus Marlborough Court House. C-O-U-R-T, House, H-O-U-S-E. Marlborough Court House is a hotel. Got it? Hello? Okay.
Can you spell it again? The first
Olley,
name.
Olley. Olley versus Marlborough Court House. Correct? Olley versus
Yeah.
Marlborough Court House. Yeah. Okay. This is a landmark case. This is a case here which gives you how notice can be incorporated into an agreement. This is a leading case here. Later part, we can also add in the case of Sangarlingam versus Wang Kukwa case also. Yeah. Okay. So what happened in this case here? Mr. and Mrs. Olley, husband and wife, they went to check into a hotel. They wanted to go to a hotel for a couple of weeks. You know, they wanted to stay in the hotel for a couple of weeks. So normally when you want to enter a hotel, you want to stay in a hotel, you go to the front office. Am I right? This is what they did. They register, they make the payment, they were given a receipt plus a card to their room. So there was a porter. You know who's a porter, right? A porter is a bellboy, you know. Help them to carry their luggage to the room. So he left it outside the door and he left. First, the wife entered the room. Followed by the husband. And then when the husband entered the room, he closed the door. When he closed the door, on the reverse side of the door, there was a notice. The notice says the hotel management would not be held liable. The hotel management would not be held liable for loss or damage to any valuable items. See, on the door, they put up a notice here. The hotel management would not be held liable for loss or damage to any valuable items. Both the husband and wife saw that notice. The following day, they went out for some shopping, came back after shopping. The wife discovered her expensive fur coat was missing. Plus some of her personal belongings were missing. So they got very upset. They went and saw the duty manager for compensation. The duty manager looked at them, yeah. He asked this question, hey, are you both people blind people? We have already put up a notice in your door saying that you won't be held liable for any loss or damage. So we are relying on that, we are not going to pay you anything. So this couple, they got upset and they decided to sue the Marlborough courthouse in the court of law. They decided to sue. When this case went to the court, the judge in this particular case here raised three questions, the judge in this particular case, he raised three questions. The first question he asked in the court is this: is there a contract between Oli and Marlborough Courthouse? Is there a contract between Oli and Marlborough Courthouse? Yes or no? What do you think? Is there a contract between Oli and Marlborough Courthouse? Ada ke tak ada?
Tak ada.
Tak ada. Okay, you are saying tak ada. Any others, Cassandra? What about you, Cassandra?
I think no as well.
No, also. Okay, what about you, Janice? Is there a contract between Oli and the Marlborough Courthouse? Yes or no, Janice?
No.
No. Shirley? Shirley, what about you, Shirley?
I think yes.
Okay, what about Timmy? Timmy, are you on the line?
It should be yes.
Yes, huh? Okay, so here you see, the moment you make a payment, Oli, husband, wife make a payment, they're given a receipt. Am I right? So a contract has already concluded between Oli versus Marlborough Courthouse. Am I right? They make a payment, a receipt has been given, then a contract has already been concluded between both of them. Yes to that question. Was there a contract? Yes. Then the second question. Was there a display of notice? Was there a display of notice in the form of an exemption clause? Was there a notice of display in the form of an exemption clause? Yes or no?
Have.
Yes.
Oh,
On the reverse side of the door, am I right? In the bedroom door, am I right? Yes to that question. So the first question, the answer is yes. The second question, the answer is yes. The third is the most important question. At what point was that notice brought to the attention of the parties? At what point was that notice brought to the attention of the parties? Is it before entering into an agreement, or is it at the time of entering into an agreement, or is it after entering into an agreement? When did this couple came to know about the notice? Is it before entering into an agreement, or is it at the time of
After.
entering into an agreement, or is it after?
After.
After, right? So this is the leading case here, where the judge laid down a law. They said if any party were to rely on an exemption clause in the form of a notice, that notice must be brought to the attention of the parties either before entering to an agreement or at least at the time of entering to an agreement. Only then that notice is valid. But since this notice came in after the contract has been concluded, then that notice is inapplicable. So the hotel lost the case. So now the law is here, if any party wanted to rely on an exemption clause in the form of a notice, that notice must be brought to the attention of the parties either at the time of entering to an agreement or before entering to an agreement. Only then the notice is valid. But since this notice was brought in after the contract has been concluded, it is invalid. So the hotel lost the case. Fair or not fair? Fair or not fair?
fair.
Fair.
Fair. Because the judge in this case, you know what the judge said? They should have put the notice at the counter where they're making the payment. Then yes, then they know of that notice. Am I right? After seeing the notice, still you wanted to go and say that is there. That means it is already brought to the attention of the parties. Am I right? But here no. So cannot. So the law is very clear now. Yeah. If any parties wanted to rely on an exemption clause in the form of notice, that notice must be brought to the attention of the parties either at the time of entering to an agreement or before entering to an agreement. Only then it is valid. Clear?
Yes.
Clear, yeah? Okay. But let me tell you, the parties, listen carefully, the parties can put whatever notice they want. But whether that notice is reasonable or unreasonable, it is for the court to decide. It is for the court to decide. Okay. Now, having said it, the third one is previous cause of dealing, right? Previous cause of dealing, right? Hello? The third one, previous cause of dealing, yeah? Okay. For previous cause of dealing, you can use the case of Sperling versus Bradshaw. Spurling versus Bradshaw, Bradshaw. Okay. This is a very, very complicated case here. I want you all to go and read up this case, But let me explain what you mean by previous course of dealing. Yeah. Okay. Since you all are aware of this case of Orley versus Marlborough Courthouse, yeah, I will use this case to explain what you mean by previous course of dealing. Okay. Now, let's say this Orley has stayed in the hotel for 2 weeks. Since they stayed in the hotel for 2 weeks, they are aware of that notice. Am I right? They are aware of notice. Let's say nothing has gone missing. So they left the hotel. After 1 year, they're coming back to the hotel again. After 1 year, they're coming back to the hotel again. At the counter, there's no display of notice. It's again in their room only. This time, something has gone missing. Can they sue the hotel? Can they sue the hotel this time?
Wait, can
No.
you repeat?
Cannot. Yong. Do you think they can or cannot, Yong?
I didn't hear the last
Okay.
sentence you say.
Now, you see, this couple, first time they stayed in the hotel, nothing has gone wrong. They stayed there for 2 weeks. They are aware of the notice in the room, After 1 year, they're coming back again to stay in the hotel. No notice in the counter, in the place where they're making the payment, but it is in their room. This time, something, they have lost it in the room. Can they sue the hotel?
Cannot, I think, because they already know before.
Okay. So since they are because of the previous course of dealing with the hotel, they are aware of such a notice, right? So they cannot sue because they already knew about this notice. But the law says the previous course of dealing cannot be more than 2 years. It should have taken place, the previous course of dealing, within 2 years, because sometimes longer period people tend to forget. And also the judge would take into consideration the age of the person. Let's say very elderly couple above the age of 18, maybe they're thinking very blur, they tend to forget. But these are the factors the court will take into consideration in deciding. Tepat?
Yes.
Clear? Okay, I want you all to go and read up the case on Sperling versus Bradshaw on this, yeah? Sperling versus Bradshaw. Okay, now, you see here, I did mention in the beginning stage here, when the Contract Act 1950 was drafted here, in the Contract Act, nothing has been mentioned about the exemption clause. I told you all right. Okay, so if that's the case, I told you all, Section 3 and Section 5 of the Civil Law Act 1956 will come in, where they can use the English law to remedy the situation because there's no Malaysian law, right? Okay, in this situation, what happened here? We have one act, English act here called Unfair Contract Terms Act 1977. Unfair Contract Terms Act 1977. In short, you put it as capital U, capital C, capital T, capital A, 1977. Unfair Contract Terms Act 1977. This Unfair Contract Terms Act 1977, yeah? Section 2, subsection 1. Section 2, subsection 1 of the Unfair Contract Terms Act 1977 says you cannot exclude liability for personal injury and death. You can never ever exclude liability for personal injury and death. The law is very clear.
For
You
personal what?
you cannot exclude liability for personal injury and death. You cannot exclude liability for personal injury and death. Let's say you're having a hotel here. At the main entrance of the hotel here, you're putting a big signboard. You're saying you are going to stay in this hotel at your own risk. Any injury or death take place while living in this hotel, we are not held liable. That's a notice saying you are going to stay in this hotel at your own risk. Any injury or death take place while living in this hotel, the hotel is not held liable. Let's say one night you are sleeping in your room and the ceiling fell and you're injured. Can you sue the hotel? The
No.
notice says the notice says you cannot sue. You are living in, you are staying in the hotel at your own risk. So here you cannot exclude liability for personal injury and death. You as the owner of the hotel, you must make sure that the hotel is safe and sound for all visitors. Right. So you cannot exclude liability for personal injury and death. You have to pay. You have to take responsibility. The law is very clear. You cannot exclude liability for personal injury and death. You can never. If anyone injured due to the negligence of the hotel or due to the something fall on your head, then you can sue. The hotel cannot exclude liability for personal injury and death. Clear? Hello? That's what section 2, subsection 1 says. Are you clear on that, mate? Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
clear.
Hello? Okay. Section 2, subsection 2. Section 2, okay, we'll just go for another 5 more minutes. Yeah. Section 2, subsection 2 says you can exclude liability for loss or damage to property provided reasonable steps have been taken. Provided reasonable steps have been taken. You can exclude liability for loss or damage to property provided reasonable steps have been taken. Let's say you are staying in a hotel. That hotel, they have a fencing, they have security guard, they have CCTV camera all corners of the building. Something has gone missing. You cannot sue the hotel because the hotel has taken all the necessary steps to safeguard your property. If that hotel do not have a fencing, do not have a security guard, do not have a CCTV camera, if anything goes missing, then the hotel is liable because they did not take the necessary steps to safeguard your property there. Okay. Now, that is section 2, subsection 2 says that. Section 5, yeah, very important section. You know what section 5? Here, one of the parties must be a consumer. If you wanted to rely on the Unfair Contract Terms Act 1977, one of the parties must be a consumer. One is a commercial party, one is a consumer. This Unfair Contract Terms Act 1977 come in to protect the consumer because the consumer are the weaker parties. If both are commercial parties, then this act is not applicable. This act only comes in when one of the parties is a consumer because consumer are always the weaker parties. Am I right? And
Sir,
section,
can you repeat again?
okay, section 5 says the Unfair Contract Terms Act is only applicable when one of the parties is a consumer. Okay, the hotel is a commercial party. You are staying in that hotel, you are a consumer, am I right? Then this act will come in to protect the consumer because the consumer is the weaker parties. If both are commercial parties, then this act would not be applicable. Clear? Section 11 says what is reasonable, fair to both parties. The stronger party should not take advantage of the weaker party. Section 11 says what is reasonable, fair to both parties. The stronger party should not take advantage of the weaker party. As what I said in the beginning here, you can put whatever clause you want. Display of notice, you can put whatever you want. But it is for the court to decide whether that display of notice is it reasonable or unreasonable. Okay, let's say you're going to Imperia. At the entrance of the Imperia classroom entrance, notice is saying all students are entering into this classroom at their own risk. Any injury or death take place while seated in this classroom. Imperia management is not held liable. Let's say all of us are sitting. Let's say the ceiling collapsed and some of us are injured. Can we sue the Imperial management? Of course can, because here the notice you are entering into this classroom at your own risk, that notice is unreasonable. Am I right? You as the owner of the building, you must make sure that the building is safe and sound for all visitors. Dapat kan? You got it?
Yeah. Can you say again what is the section 11?
Section 11 says what is reasonable, fair to both parties. Because normally one stronger party will put in all clauses to protect their own interests. Am I right? The weaker parties normally they have to agree to all the terms. Am I right? So the stronger party cannot put whatever clause which is unreasonable. So it's for the court to decide whether that display of notice is it reasonable or not reasonable. It's for the court to decide, not for you to decide. The court will say, this notice is unreasonable. So the person who inserted that clause cannot rely on it. Okay. Now I just mentioned the Unfair Contract Terms Act 1977, Section 2, Subsection 1, Section 2, Subsection 2, Section 5, and Section 11. Right. This all now comes under the Consumer Protection Act of Malaysia 1999. The same purpose.
Sorry, under what?
Under the Consumer Protection Act 1999. Dapat?
So means that this all sections is the same with the Consumer Protection Act.
Yes. So you see, now the Consumer Protection Act is providing a protection for the consumer because the consumer are the weaker parties, right? Same. Okay, you could see the Unfair Contract Terms Act 1977. You cannot exclude liability for personal injury and death. Section 2, subsection 1. Section 2, subsection 2 says you loss or damage to property provided reasonable steps has been taken. Am I right? And then one of the parties must be a consumer. Section 5 says what is reasonable. Section 11, right? All this now comes under the Consumer Protection Act 1999. That's the Malaysian one. Same purpose. The motive is still the same. Okay. Any question?
No.
Okay, in between, if you all have any problem pertaining to anything, you all can just WhatsApp me. I can have a class with you all. I don't mind spending some extra classes for you. I don't mind. That got nothing to do with Imperial. That is between both of us. I don't mind.
Okay, sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So thanks for listening. If in between you all